Hi everyone, my name is Aquia Harris. I am the marketing lead for BlackGirlGamers, and we're joined by three of our friends that we want to talk to about the state of gaming within Africa. Before we get into that, if you're not familiar with the holiday or you haven't heard of it yet, World Africa Day commemorates the formation of the African Union in 1965 and the subsequent unity within each of the countries that are a part of the African Union. So I think since then it's kind of grown into like a worldwide celebration of Africa's growth, its creativity, the cultures within each of its countries, and we want to. That's something that we've seen, I think, across, especially within the gaming industry, and that's something that we wanted to just celebrate and bring some light to. So this year we are spotlighting some of Africa's trailblazers within our own called World Africa Day of Play. So this will kind of showcase people's unique perspectives within gaming, the experiences that you all have had moving in within the gaming industry, and then these just achievements that everyone's had within this space. So we're going to kick off. I'm going to give it to our attendees so that they can all introduce themselves. So we can start with Ira.
Yes, hi. I'm Aram. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Letty Arts, and we are a game development studio in Africa, mostly from Ghana, Accra. I'm speaking from Accra. And we build games with African history and folklore, and also serious games that champions diversity, impact-based products. And I'm excited to be here and looking forward for the discussion. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dimple Moeti. I'm a business development manager currently at Rocket Ride Games. We're a consulting agency in the game space, so basically I find development studios, I connect them to publishers and help them find funding to make their games. Rocket Ride is a company that works with studios and developers from all over the world. I'm the biz dev here in Africa. We've got another one in Southeast Asia. We've got one in Europe, North America, and South America. So the goal really is to help studios that are looking to sign their first game and have grown or come from work for hire. I've been in the industry now for about 8 years, working predominantly with IP generating studios here in South Africa and helping create and run events. Kind of like I've done everything. And that's me. Hi, nice to meet everyone. What's up, Michael?
Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Michael, but then please don't call me Oscar. It always feels somehow when I hear Michael, yes. So you can call me Oscar, and what can I say? I'm that community guy in the African video games industry. I've been working for the past 7-8 years, trying to build a Pan-African community through an organization called Africa Comic Aid, and that has been really awesome. And what I basically do is to see how to support the creators in the space, the game developers, the people who actually build these games, to ensure we can work together, collaborate cross-border to build a sustainable industry, one where the developers can thrive, where they can build studios that can grow the ecosystem. And lately also I've been leading gaming partnerships here at TikTok, also across sub-Saharan Africa, to see how to support the game developers to publish their games. And that's me, currently based in Nigeria. Yeah.
Nice. So I'm going to start with just specifically because you all are from and based in different countries, and I think they've all had a different approach to kind of being able to grow the gaming industry and the community. So I'm just curious to hear your perspectives and your experiences and how your countries have supported the growth of the gaming community and gaming industry.
So I think that there's a lot of opportunity for particularly the South African government at a national level to support the growth of the gaming industry. I think that there is a lot of potential within that industry, especially because, we have tertiary institutions, universities, private colleges that teach game design, and there's a lot of space within the gaming industry, particularly if you're making your own games, if you're able to start your own studio. But at the moment, there's been little to no support.
Yes.
But I think at a provincial level, so which is the equivalent of like a state in the United States, there has been some form of support through helping get speakers in, trying to find ways to support gaming-centered events, but not as much monetarily or support in terms of like growing the industry. There are non-governmental agencies that are doing their best, or a lot of consulates that have found ways to fund, but I think that there's still a lot of catching up to the present that our government needs to really engage with, particularly because South Africa pushes to be, is pushing for like a third industrial revolution that's going to be more tech based, while not understanding or meaningfully engaging with game development as an industry.
Oscar, Aram, do you guys agree, or have you seen something similar, you feel like, for within your countries, or is it different?
Yes, I think it's similar here in Ghana. So you don't see any direct support yet from the government, but individual institutions like the National Film Authority has been making moves to work with the Gamers Association here, both the esports community and the game developers community, to see if there could be some synergies and probably how to mobilize some funding together on collaborative projects. We've also seen efforts from non-governmental organizations, as well as probably embassies like the French embassy, like the Creation Africa Fund, and these kind of embassy level initiatives to support in their very small way both animation and gaming. What we are doing as studios, like for instance, Letty Arts has its internship programs, which we've been running for a long time, and that has escalated into some educational institutions actually taking some gaming courses here in Ghana. So I think Ashesi University just adapted a gaming course, which is a private university, and the public ones have also heard of it, so they want to also engage. So it's a gradual process, and the work that Oscar, like Africa Communicate, does, and some other community driven organizations are doing, are also actually escalating the awareness. For us as developers, in our idea is how do we support indie developers to also have some visibility. So recently there was like some UNICEF challenge, and some of our members in the association got accepted in the UNICEF Startup Challenge as game developers. So these efforts, individual efforts, would eventually escalate to become something collective that the government cannot resist, right? We see the esports community growing very fast. However, one of the initiatives that we are championing now is supporting esports teams. And through that support, we task them to play local games. Instead of just playing the FIFAs and the Mortal Kombat, we ask the teams that, hey, when you go for competitions, play Africa's Legends, or play Puzzle Scout, or play Sweep. And one of the teams just signed on a first Sweep player. So they've signed on their first player, that is the local game player, right? So these are things that we have to consciously champion. And once that is done, we also have to flood the headlines in terms of text, so that when people are searching, those kind of news can pop up instead of the like the frequent corruption and war news that comes up when people type up Africa. We should really be writing a lot about the least efforts that we have in the gaming industry. So organizations like Africa Communicate, like they do a lot in promoting that, both in terms of text and blogs and all that. So I think that's what we need to do. Every game studio needs to run a blog. Like Letty Arts, we have a blog. Every intern that comes, we tell the intern, right. It's all to flood the search engine with relevant gaming content that would pop up when someone types Africa, right? So these are the things that we can all do in our own small ways, and the government will have no choice than to just follow suit.
If there were government support, what do you feel like the most effective place for it to start would be, or where would you like to see it start?
I think from the from the universities and institutions can come in very handy, and from direct game studios, like having game creation funds, like if you want to make a game, like what Finland did for the Techis Fund. So all game studios in Finland have benefited from the Techis Fund, right? So I want to make a game, I can apply for a fund, get some startup, get some holiday, make some games, try it out and see if it succeeds. And then, if we have that kind of conscious direct funding from the government just to experiment, because gaming is an emerging market, right? Now there is a lot of noise about STEM education, STEAM education, and robotics is coming in. So we are tagging along with that kind of wave. However, gaming is very different. I think they should even be doing gaming first, but because they don't know about it, we have to just tag along and say that, AI. Gamers have been doing AI since the beginning. Like, we do AI all the time. We breathe AI, we drink AI, right? But this whole phase of AI, yes. So we just have to be humble and see how to get some of the small humble pie, and then use to grow. So yeah, from education aspect and direct funds for studios would be the start.
To add on what Aram said, I think for me it's definitely the answer is always money. They give, have that fund. Give people money. It's give people money to make games. You need money to make games, and I think the money, and the money can. It's will be nice from our government's money. No, but it can come in various forms, right? I think that education is very important, as Aram said, and having funds for studios, so that it's particularly around prototyping funding, so that you can build demos, you can build prototypes, you can fail, but really have that ability to focus solely on what you are making and to build with intentionality. You really want to build a great game, but also have that support for what's the next step after you build a great game. Because, it's obviously not safe for the other two, but I'm on the tip of Africa. I'm like at the furthest end of the continent. It is very far to travel to any games events. It's very expensive. So it's things like, funding for prototyping, funding to travel to events such as your GDCs, your Gamescoms, your big events where you can not just speak to publishers, but also, build professional relationships and network. We all hate networking, but it's such an important aspect of game development, of being able to really get someone to not just speak to you, but to take the time to really look at what you have created. And then obviously funding to support studios that exist already as well. Like, gaming is emergent, it is tricky, so I can understand the hesitancy, but it's also one of those, if you invest, there are very big rewards and very big opportunities that exist, being able to match funding, whether that's for prototypes or for full funding for games. It's really around having those kinds of funds from your government, have tax breaks. Tax breaks would be great. It makes a lot of countries more palatable for higher work. It's really being able to have a government that'll look at the state of your industry, understand where it can go in the short term, medium and long term, and then being willing to put their money where their mouths are, because of the profit or the reward from that kind of investment can be massive, and can change the face of an industry very quickly.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think I'll build upon what they've both said. One thing, however, I do note is, I think that conversation is what is hugely missing, right? The first thing I've seen across Africa is a lot of the stakeholders in the game development industry are gameplay programmers, right? So we are very short of business people. And then when we're speaking about government support and engagement, there are people who have these particular skills, because engaging the government is not a short-term negotiation. It can go as far as 7-10 years. And there are people that are good at this. It's just like fundraising. A gameplay programmer who is the founder of a studio would really, really fail at fundraising. You need someone that is good at it. And we are missing that. In our industry, we don't have everything complete together yet. We're limited, especially in the non-technical side. And so that conversation with the government is missing, because I would say across sub-Saharan Africa and even across Africa entirely, I've seen that every government now has a budget for the creative industry. But in areas where the stakeholders there are not actively seeking out business opportunities, they are not able to engage with the government. If you look at Kenya, there's the EVA Fund that provides funding for game studios. In Nigeria now, there's the IDICE Fund, which is a merger between the Bank of Industry in Nigeria and Alliance Francaise, that's the French government. So they pooled funds together and all. So I think the governments are willing, but they are not able to get to the right stakeholders. And that's the first issue I think we should really tackle. The second one is, now when the funds or those opportunities are there, it seems to be it's always the wrong stakeholders that get it. or people that don't understand the industry. And that's a very big problem. That's a very huge problem, because then in the past few years, if you hear me speak, I speak about how the gaming industry is worth $200 billion. It's bigger than music and movie combined. And then all of a sudden in Nigeria, everybody is doing gaming. And I'm like, but you don't even know how this thing works. But everybody is doing gaming. And before you know it, a lot of funds appropriated for the creative industry, the digital economy. You see people come in, they say they're doing stuff, and contrary to just what Aram said, I really think a lot of people are investing too much now on trainings and education. And the question is, where are they going after? Really? Let's focus on the game studios. Let's give out prototype funds, because games is like entertainment. You really don't know which one will succeed. So you need to be able to have that backing to fail confidently. But in Africa, we're on survival mode. If you fail, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, if you fail, it's a heavy blow, and it's not forgiving at all. But yeah, so I've seen across, to follow up with what Aram said as well, the French government has been very helpful for the games industry across sub-Saharan Africa. Same with the German government. So we're looking at Alliance Francaise coming up with the Creation Africa or the Institute Francais. We're looking at Goethe Institute coming up with the Train Jam and so many amazing initiatives, Enter Africa. These are really the people that have been supporting the games industry. And then on my own end in Nigeria, I've seen the Nigerian government as well come up with initiatives. On the federal level, we had the Ministry of Culture partnering with Malio Games to build a cultural game, right? And that was really exciting. On the state level, the Lagos state government itself sponsored me to GITEX last year, speaking to the whole need of events like support. So I was in Dubai last year. I connected with a lot of game stakeholders. And so they are trying. What we just need to do is now bridge that gap and connect them to the right stakeholders. Because the problem is a lot of people that have access to the government and have access to these funds are not the real stakeholders in the industry. And then in some cases, they organize forums and all. They take pictures of us. And then when the money comes, we are nowhere. Yeah, but the government is trying. I've seen that across Africa, there are budgets. We just need the right stakeholders to bridge that gap and keep on fighting, because it's a long-term game. Yeah.
I want to so first I'll tell you all a story just for how I figured out that this was the case, because it was like it never crossed my mind that this would be a thing until I ended up spending three-ish months living in Ghana, and this was just after just around when the PS5 came out. And I was thinking about if I buy it back home in New York or do I buy it here while I'm going to be here for a little while. And I went to the Accra Mall and went to the PlayStation store and looked at the price. And I was like, maybe I'm not converting this correctly. And I asked them, just confirm the price for me really quick. And I converted it, and it came to like $1,500 American dollars for the console. I'm like, it doesn't even cost $1,500 in the US. So it's like, I don't understand who is supposed to be able to afford this. If it's like, I can't afford this, right? I'm not spending $1,500 American dollars on a console. So it's just, and I wonder if I'm sure that's a part of why there's so much like more mobile game creation and just like focus on it. But I'm interested in just one, has that gotten any better since then, or just the access to consoles, or how does it continue to affect the development of games and the kinds of games that people should decide to develop for the country, for the countries?
It does have a big impact, right? Because there are more people with smartphones, with mobile phones, than there are with computers or consoles. Console prices, I obviously don't want to speak for the other countries, but in South Africa at least, it's crazy. I bought my PS5 last year, which is 2 years after it had come out, and it was still the equivalent of about, I think, to get the console, a second controller and like a charger for the controllers cost $1,000, which is crazy. Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. Somebody told me they bought one for like 8,000 Rand towards the end of last year, and I nearly punched them in the mouth. I was so mad. I was so angry.
I'm gonna fight too.
I was like, oh no, I need to fight you. How dare you? But and that has a huge impact, because I don't know why tech and consoles have such exorbitant import fees, even on computers. Like Windows machines, not so much, but like MacBooks, Xbox, all of them, they just come in at like the amount you have to pay for them being shipped, and the import duties are very, very exclusionary. They tend to exclude a large majority of the people from owning these machines, which is unfortunate. And so because more people have smartphones, there is more of a push for mobile development, so that we can be in conversation in terms of our creativity with the people in our continent, which makes a lot of sense for me. It's also, I think, in terms of developing for mobile is a lot cheaper. It's a lot more affordable than, say, developing for computer to a degree, for PC games. But I've always been very pro the creation of PC games. I think once you've made the game, it is significantly cheaper by, I think, a factor of like 10 or 100 to publish, to make back money from a PC game or a console game as opposed to a mobile phone game, because there's just so much that needs to go into user acquisition. It's a very flooded market, and I mean, I've been in games now for a long time. I know people who are in the mobile side and mobile publishing, and anytime I ask a question, I feel like any answer I get gives me the sense that nobody knows what the fuck's going on in that industry. Like, games do well or they don't. Why? Depending on how much you spend. They either just do well or they don't, and you kind of have to pray, which is terrifying. You make a great game and you just hope for the best. Whereas I think there is somewhat, not a lot of more control, but I think that it's a lot easier to get a sense of how well a game can and can't do on PC. I think there is not necessarily, you can tell immediately, but I think there is a level where you can have expectations for like how well a game can do, or how much money you can make back from a game. Obviously dependent on a lot of factors and how good the game is, but there's definitely more opportunity, and I think it does in the long run become cheaper to make PC games, but I think there's still a lot of structural barriers that prevent that, both in terms of the fact that that's just not what the majority of the player base on the continent has, and because there is more of an investment up front for the development of those kinds of games.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and the problem goes way beyond that. One can say the market forces are against us in Africa. because because you see, this has actually held back investment from even top stakeholders like, let's say, Sony or Microsoft, because they can't actually track how many people have these consoles for them to invest in the market. But the reality on ground is this scenario, which is mostly a market issue by the government and all, has created an informal market. Because in Nigeria, for example, a lot of people have iPhones, a lot of people have PlayStations, right? But these are not like brand new, and these cannot be tracked legally. Yeah, and that's because of the high cost, which is something the government, if they look into it, or even the manufacturers, if they look into it, they can cut down. Yes, the importation fees are crazy, and this holds us back, because if we're using things through the proper channels, the owners of these softwares or services or products will be able to track and know what to do to optimize the market. And it goes beyond even like the PlayStation. Look at something like financial services, for example. Once Nigeria is blocked out from PayPal, so you can have a PayPal account, but you can receive money, you can't spend the money. It's crazy. Look at Steam, for example. As a game developer, for you to publish your game on Steam, it's very difficult if you're coming from Nigeria. And luckily, myself, through Africa Comic Aid, and even Games Industry Africa, were able to work with Steam to see how to verify the game developers to make the process easy for them. And you also know now that this is limited to how many game developers we can reach. So if there's a game dev that doesn't know about Africa Comic Aid or doesn't know about Games Industry Africa, they will not know that they can get their game. And they have to reach out to people in the US or out there to open Steam accounts. And then you can see an African published game, but you won't know the actual developer is from Nigeria. So the forces are against us, but fortunately and unfortunately, we always find a way to thrive.
Yeah, that's so true. I think it's also just like a...
one way or another.
No, it's so true. It's something I think about a lot, because I think that maybe in the last like 3-4 years, I've seen a shift where bigger companies, international companies, are actively looking into Africa, are actively investing, such as, you know, your Xbox, your Microsoft, Epic Games. Like there is a lot more focus on the continent and eagerness to invest in and understand the continent, both in terms of the consumers and the industry. But I also think that it's kind of complicated, because there are difficulties in terms of where our industries are as we are growing versus what some of the opportunities internationally look like. And so it's about bridging that gap so that you can really have those companies meet us where we are, as well as being able to really fully tap into the opportunities here in a way whereby, you know, the developers do well, whereby like money can still remain on the continent and moving within the continent, as opposed to just being extracted fully by big companies. Insert anti-capitalist rant here. It's quite long. But I think that sometimes in some of the interactions, no names will be mentioned to protect the guilty, you can tell that with some of the initiatives they create or funds that exist, they're not really built by Africans, they're not built in conversation with Africans, and they're not really built for us, whereby where a company would need to be in order to get funding or, you know, to get the kind of support that would really help a studio grow and the kinds of growth that they want to see just aren't necessarily healthy or in the best interests for the studio here. And it's a type of growth mindset that I will say it has led to a lot of tears and basically blood running in the streets for the last like year and a half in our industry, right? Where everyone's pushed to go from being an indie studio to being a AA studio, from being AA to being a AAA studio, and always just this pushing and pushing and pushing, growing at a rate that isn't right for what the studio is trying to accomplish, for creating sustainable industries versus just like, well, you know, we've given you some money, you have to make a game of X size, you have to be able to do Y in 5 years or 3 years. So it does make it tricky. I feel like I'm being the negative Nelly today, but
No.
I'm cute. I've got cat ears.
We here for the real talk.
But it's a struggle because it's also hard to be in conversation with companies and funds like that, because you're also just going, yeah, dude, like, give us some money to make indie games. We don't need $10 million to make a game. We can quite comfortably make a great game for $1 million, for $100,000, for substantially less, but you're not going to get the kind of growth investors want to see, because it doesn't matter what you actually make or the actual industry and the companies. It just matters that they grow. It's fine. I'm fine. It's fine. It's fine. But yeah, so I think.
Sorry, I was gonna say, like, I'm just as you're talking, like, just around like how to grow sustainably, like not grow too fast, because I feel like that, like, too big too fast is exactly how you fail. So, but I'm wondering now is like, are there like lessons to be learned and just how to grow sustainably as an African dev studio?
So I kept saying people would ask how have we done it for all this while still running a studio, growing steadily, and not too fast. And obviously we've made mistakes at some point when we've grown very fast and we have to downscale again and then do it again, then grow again, then downscale, because you need to be able to manage stuff. And I would say it's mostly about the vision and consistency and finding very passionate people, because without the passionate people and the vision, you will burn out. And there are days that every day you ask yourself, what the hell am I doing in this industry? But then, like, you ask yourself all the time, but what keeps ringing in your heart is, hey, this is an industry, not a company, right? A company is not only a company, it's a whole ecosystem. So that keeps you going. So even if the company isn't doing well, is the industry doing well? Is someone else benefiting? Is it championing the whole industry? So these are some of the questions and the motivations that we normally have. And you also have to put certain principles down that you tackle what you can and gradually dive into what you want it to be. So a lot of studios go in like, I'm making a PC game, and they want to be Tekken or they want to be Mortal Kombat right from the
like, we're also making an engine, and you're like, why?
Yeah.
So what are you doing?
Who asked for that?
Do you know what it takes to build this? Right? So what can you do? So you can see at Letty Arts, we always have the bigger vision, which is a whole universe, mythical universe, characters drawn to the greatest ambitions. But what can we do? What money do we have to be able to build a small, complete prototype to still make people engage? And that puts you out there to get a proof of concept. And then the next iteration, you get money to improve it and improve. So from Letty's product, like Africa's Legend, when you study it, it's getting better. And now we are looking at how to start a fellowship program, like the Letty Arts Fellowship Program, for like the question Oscar asked, that when you train people, where do they go? Right? Like there are a lot of training programs. So our fellowship program would be announced very soon, which targets the mid to professional level, right? Mid to professionals put into a fellowship to come work on the dream game of Letty Arts, right? Building upon. So we are innovating every second, looking at the trends of the ecosystem, forming partnerships, talking to institutions like Alliance Française, and like all these programs that we've benefited from. This is the time that we are trying to innovate around it, and it might not come with direct cash injection, but it comes with a lot of clarity, mentorship, discussion, and the ecosystem, like for the skill set required to make it happen. So these are some of the secrets that a studio like us, we use to survive. And we do a lot of co-productions. Like we do a lot of note comparisons. Like myself and Hugo, we are always talking, comparing notes with Olivier, Siddiq. Like we have this relationship and network that we just keep discussing stuff and seeing what we can do together to be able to have access to different markets and different opportunities, right? And because without that, you can't survive.
It's one thing I do love about the industry, definitely here in South Africa and definitely on the wider continent, is that there's a level of collaboration. We work together. We understand that, like, if one of us can succeed, all of us can succeed, and sharing the knowledge, the tips, the tricks. And, you know, from a more businessy side, as a biz dev for the industry, I always say, you can dream big, you can want to make your engine and your MMO, but you have to understand what that entails, how much that costs, the kind of skills you need. So it's always being willing to do that research into, okay, what can I make with what I have? What is reasonable? And being honest with how long things take. And if you're a producer, expect things to take 6 months longer than the devs tell you it will take. It probably will. You know, it's just having that backbone of knowledge around entrepreneurship, around budgeting, around building and running a business while you are also having a game studio, because the creativity is important, but being able to sustain and protect the creativity requires some level of business or production support and backing, operational support and backing, so that, you know, your team can run well, that you can get your money to go as far as it can go healthily without like crunching, without being exploitative to your team. So that's just my quick 2 cents.
Exactly.
So just thinking about the fact that like the layoffs that have been happening for the past at least year, if not 2, maybe, I think now, the vitriol around like Gamergate and everything that's happening with that now, the just general chaos and fire that the gaming industry has been for the past several years, is that something that has become more pervasive within the African continent as well, or is it more of a we have to deal with this on the Western side, or do you feel like it's now starting to like permeate within the African industry also?
One thing that is more prevalent here, it's the layoffs. That's one thing that has a lot of more effect, because the best games industry jobs the Africans get when they're working with these foreign studios. They get to do more, they get exposed to more, and then they earn way better than if you're working for a local game studio. And for the game studio founders themselves, when you're ideally looking for funding, you're not looking for funding from an African investor. Their ideology of investing in our industries, it doesn't work at all, because they're like, if they're giving you $1,000, the next question is, where will I get my 1 million back? And it's not like that. And so we are always looking outwards for that support. And then in a scenario where we are looking at, it's not so stable, then you can understand that these are factors. So that's where I've seen a lot of issues, and even within Africa as well, some studios are also beginning to close up, and I think that's the saddest thing. But then it's the reality of any industry. For me, I'm excited because now it's showing we have an industry. An industry is made with many stories, diverse experiences, and the fact that this is happening shows that we are maturing as a market. Yeah.
Yes. I think, I think I agree with Oscar. So even just today, I was telling my team members that, hey, you've seen people being laid off elsewhere, right? And things are hard. I just want you to remember that things are hard, right? So I'm not going to lay you off, but you need to push.
Know how good this is. Appreciate your space. Know how good this is.
Because things are very hard. And if you leave these walls, it might be hard to get somewhere else to go, right?
That works.
So So I think yes, things are generally hard, but we make it work. For African studios, the good thing is we've innovated in a way that we use consulting to actually complement our internal dreams. So when things get very tough, you try to see what else you can do in the creative space. Like Letty tries to keep it creative space, so we don't go and do banking or go and do railway or build a house for someone. We try to keep it in a creative space to probably do some narrative story for a comic book or a video game, remote work, to be able to invest in internal projects, right? But the goal is to get the internal project sustain it itself. So at Letty Arts, we have teams around the games, and it's always like, make sure your game fends for itself. So the team lately have been seeding games in very unusual stores to see retention and some large numbers. And trust me, some of the games are making almost 60,000 players a month in certain stores, right? And some outlets to test out mechanics. Some teams have started checking out how these games are doing, whether they are sticky, they are easily monetized and all that, in unusual stores, not the Google Plays that could make you invest in some advertising dollars. You can check, put it in probably Ayoba, or put it in maybe the Palm Store, on Transsion. Like, just check out some unusual outlets just to see if your game is sticky enough, because we don't have the publishers. If I tell publishers that African studios may not have case studies because we've not had the chance to put the game in front of 1 million users. If you pick the game, put it with them in front of 1 million users, then we can build the data from there. But if you come to me to show you traction, I've not had the capacity to put the game in front of 1 million users, so I can't show you actual traction. I can give you traction of maybe 5,000 people or 10,000 people. So we've now innovated our own way to see how to put these games in front of, like, to build traction. So you see how we innovate. Africans are always innovating, and these are coming from internal team members and suggestions. Because look, money is hard to get, but as studios, we still survive and strive. And I think the ecosystem is also getting a bit much more consolidated, to be able to make it work.
Yeah, I think definitely in terms of the industry, the layoffs, it's a lot harder to access funding, even if you're talking to international publishers, which means it's like fucking hundreds, I shouldn't swear, but it's like 50, 60 times harder for developers if you're from the African continent, or you're from South America, or you're from Southeast Asia, and you're not an established studio, or you're not a studio, based in like Europe or Canada. It is infinitely harder because it's harder to connect to people. It's harder to get your name out there, to build that traction, to gain that kind of trust with the stakeholders. So what's happening in the industry has made it a lot harder, and you do end up losing studios, particularly around work for hire. I think to also just quickly speak to sort of the sexism and racism that you see online, it has less of an impact in Africa because of where we're based and located. Obviously, you see a lot of it online, and it does make it hard, if you're a woman or you're a black woman, or you're, just any person, because it feels very exclusionary. It's very much, the aim is to push you out, to say that this space, that games are not for us, that they're for white dudes named like Chet. I don't know. But it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. I think a big part of that, there is that push, and there's so much vitriol, is because of this imagined entitlement, because some adverts when they were a kid told them that games belong to them, but it never really did. As black people, as women, we were always in those spaces, whether it was the first game devs being women in the 80s before the big crash, whether it's Black people always loving and engaging in games, and within some markets being like the biggest segment of game buyers consistently. We've always been here. And I think I said it earlier, if you care more that like you have to pick pronouns while you're playing Baldur's Gate 3, or that your new Assassin's Creed has a historically accurate black dude and a woman, like then you don't care about games. If the things that have upset you in the last year are the color or gender of the main characters and not how the developers of some of your favorite games are being, are losing their jobs and their livelihood, or the fact that your favorite studios are closing, even if they're successful. If you're more upset about that than you are about the layoffs and the state of the industry, then you don't care about games. I don't believe that you actually play them, right? Because ultimately, it's like the most nothing of nothing burger. If you can't imagine a fantasy game with a black person, that just tells me that you don't have a good imagination, or you don't think black people are real. I'm not sure, but either
one of the two, maybe.
But both. Either way, it's bullshit. And like, if it hurts you that much, like, then don't play any new games.
We're super over time, so I'm going to wrap our last question into the outro, because I want you guys to be able to just showcase like who you are, where people can find you, what you're working on. But the way that you were just mentioning about the developers and studios within the African continent that collaborate together, work together, and just sharing notes and everything, and knowing that that's just, I think in general, like more of that collaboration is something that I think the wider diaspora is also very interested in, and just how we can, one, just connect, I think like bridging the gap between us two, but also how we can help each other, how we can collaborate together. What does that collaboration look like? So I'm curious to understand, just like from your perspective, like what would you like to see it kind of manifest as? If we're able to create those collaborations.
I think for collaborations, I think like really engaging in online spaces and being open to mentorship, being able to actively reach out. There are a lot of spaces where we all connect online, where we give feedback on like prototypes and games, where there are obviously in-person events that are harder, but it's that collaboration of like, we want to work with you, we want to make something with you, even if it's a game jam, even if it's just having a discussion and sharing experiences. I think that's really important, particularly with collaboration. I think while they can be infighting, I think it's definitely more of a space of like, I may not agree with how you want to make games, but how can I give you support so that you can go down that journey, and understanding that there is no one right way, that it's never just an indie scene or a mobile scene, but that it's indie and it's mobile, it's indie and it's work for hire, and it's always and it's this and something else in order to grow together, even if we grow differently. I think that's vital. And then you guys can find me online, but I literally never post, so I don't know. I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth finding me.
Yeah, I think I'll just say collaboration, co-production, and exchange programs. This is something I found to be very helpful. We're working with the IGDA Foundation. That has been very helpful for us. I also went through the IGDA Foundation program. That is one global organization that has helped a lot of us get connected to global games industry stakeholders for mentorships and more. Yeah, and co-production, collaboration, if there are internship opportunities. I did mention earlier that your experience grows with the kind of project you work on. And due to limited resources on the continent, a lot of these studios are limited to how far they can push themselves. So where you can provide internship, where you can provide funding, or co-produce, these are things that would really help us also widen our imagination and reach. And yeah, you can find me online. LinkedIn, though I've slowed down on posting lately, but you can find me mostly on LinkedIn, and then just follow the organization I started out. That's Africa Communicate. A lot of people are right now behind it, pushing the work, and they're doing a lot of amazing stuff. So you can jump on that as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Aaron?
Yeah, so for me, it's also co-production for me, collaboration, internships. And like for us, we are currently working on a partnership with THU, an organization called THU. We are also doing stuff with IGDA in the education. I'm part of the education sector, so we are trying to do stuff with the education sector as well. And co-producing some really cool games that we just called for some testers for a world, like a global organization, right? So these are interesting things that come out of these initiatives that I just mentioned, right? And I think what we are working on internally currently is the UEFN implementation of Kamza Run, which we just published on Fortnite recently on test, and which is doing quite well. And we are also producing the mobile game of Kamza, the cerebral palsy superheroine. And also our fans on our existing games are crying for updates in terms of Sweeve, Puzzle Scout, and Africa's Legend. So we are building updates as quickly as possible to release in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, these are things that are happening at Letty Arts. And so you can find us lettyarts.com from the website, and also from all social media channels, Letty Arts. Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
We'll have all your links in the description on the website, on the panel once it's uploaded. Yeah. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the conversation. Thank you all for watching. We're just wrapping up here. So if you're watching on our Twitch channel, you can join in on the conversation that we're having there, and then we'll also be uploading all of the interviews and gameside chats that we've done between here and on Twitch to our YouTube channel. So you'll see more there. And happy World Africa Day.
Yeah.